Well, hello, Dolly.
Welcome to the Final Girls podcast, where we explore the intersections of horror film and feminism. This is Anna, co-founder of the Final Girls and your podcast host. This season, we've been tracing the lineage of female monsters in horror cinema. In each episode, I'm joined by a special guest to dive deep into a monster movie or two. With only 3 episodes left to go of this series, we're ramping up and talking about some contemporary horror films. And today, we're all about those possessed, bloodthirsty dolls. First up is The Bride of Chucky, the 4th installment of the Child's Play franchise about the doll possessed by the spirit of a voodoo-practicing serial killer. And this time, he's resurrected and stitched back together by his ex-girlfriend Tiffany, played by the supremely charismatic Jennifer Tilly. Alas, the human doll romance is not meant to last. And in the second part of the episode, we'll cover Annabelle, the first of the spin-offs that originated from James Wan's mega successful The Conjuring. Set in the 1960s, Annabelle expands on the backstory of the very creepy doll first glimpsed in The Conjuring. Our protagonists are the perfectly pleasant and perfectly vanilla couple John and Mia form, who are attacked by Satan worshippers, one of which dies and transfers her soul into the form's porcelain doll. To discuss both of these films in detail, I'm joined by writer, podcaster, and frequent guest Becky Dark. And as always, our conversation will contain spoilers from the very beginning. We do try and stay out of the gutter in this episode, but if you're triggered by frank discussion about throat slashing and doll tongues, brace yourselves. Becky, welcome back.
Hi, Anna.
You're a full-time resident of this podcast now, and I love it.
Oh my God. Couldn't be happier about it. Thanks for having me back again.
Always a pleasure. Maybe this episode will be a little less filthy than the previous one we did, but maybe not.
I know, how disappointing. We've got 2 films to talk about, and somehow it will be less filthy than when we just talked about the one film. But that's teeth for you.
I mean, yeah, but I don't know. We're going to start with The Bride of Chucky, so there's plenty to be gross about.
That is true. Puppets.
So let's kick off our conversation about devil dolls with The Bride of Chucky.
Well, hello, Dolly.
This Halloween, Chucky's back. But this time, there's more to fear. Because this time, he's got a playmate of his own. Bride of Chucky. This Halloween, Chucky gets lucky.
Barbie, eat your heart out.
So to start off, are you a fan of the Child's Play franchise?
I'm a huge fan of the Child's Play franchise. I would say out of the... Because there's like the big 3, right? Mm-hmm. There's like Freddie, Michael, and Jason. And then I feel kind of after those guys, there's then like Chucky and maybe like Hellraiser. But for me, out of all of those like big kind of 80s franchises, or at least, you know, these franchises that were really sort of huge in the 80s and really kind of formed in the 80s as these ongoing stories with sequel after sequel. Child's Play's got to be my favourite. It's like, I love me a bit of Friday the 13th. I love me a bit of Elm Street. Of course I do. But Child's Play has just got something really like special and playful about it. And weirdly, I think, so I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen a decent selection, and I think the quality of the Child's Play films is probably more consistent maybe than some of the other kind of big horror franchises. So yeah, huge fan.
Amazing. I love them as well. I remember watching the first 2, maybe even 3 when I was a kid. What I love about them is the fact that I always feel like the filmmakers who are making them, even when they get into quite silly territory, are having so much fun with it.
Yes.
Like, they're just, how can we have the most fun with this franchise? How can we make another installment where we're having a lull, our audience is having a lull, our actors are having fun, and it's getting kind of ridiculous in every single possible way, but also makes sense within the parameters of this world that we're building that is also kind of ridiculous?
100%. Yeah, they never, there's never like a sort of smidge of earnestness or taking themselves too seriously. I feel like the filmmakers behind the Child's Play franchise are so kind of knowing about what they're doing, and it works so well. And the slasher franchises should never take themselves too seriously, and on the whole they don't, and I think when they don't, they are the most successful, and Child's Play certainly does that well, in my opinion. Some of the Child's Play films do that the absolute best.
Your opinion is the only one that counts here today, Becky.
Thank you, darling.
So then, out of this franchise, this film, Bride of Chucky, is interesting in many ways, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot of those things. But it's also the first one where actually the whole franchise sort of rebrands itself into Chucky as opposed to Child's Play.
Yeah.
So what do you think of this, the 4th installment in particular?
I love it. I think that it takes the story that's come before and the character of Chucky, and it injects that kind of 90s meta knowingness and also this character of Tiffany at exactly the right time. Like, it doesn't let, it's only installment 4, and so you get three like really strong installments, especially 1 and 2. For me, 3 goes down a little bit, but that's kind of why I say that they inject these extra sort of new elements at exactly the right time, because I think they maybe knew that 3, it's fine, but it's not as strong. And I think they were like, okay, right, if we're going to keep this going and we're going to keep some momentum and sort of keep making them for a reason rather than just churning them out slightly mindlessly, what are we going to do differently? So yeah, I mean, the introduction of Tiffany at this point is just perfect for me.
Before we go into Tiffany, what do you think are some of those elements that this film introduces that kind of revamp or reinvigorate the franchise?
I think it slightly opens out the world a little bit. We've been so focused on the relationship between like Chucky and Andy up until this point, and the fallout from the first film into the second film and then the third film. And, this is 10 years on from the end of the third film, or certainly, we're told in Bride of Chucky that Tiffany has been like looking for the doll for 10 years after he kind of, got destroyed and went missing. And so, it kind of opens it out, and it puts Chucky up against kind of new challenges. And, because he's one of these slasher kind of baddies that really has he's kind of exploded out of the films that he stars in, and he's become the focus for them. There was Child's Plays 1, 2, and 3, and he's such an iconic villain. But at this point, this is where they put his name in the title of the film. This is very much a Chucky film, and it allows the kind of screenwriters and like Brad Dourif and stuff, and to kind of really like play with that character of Chucky and how he kind of operates in the wider world, and also kind of how he is finding himself like a little bit dated. Like, he makes comments about the music that's on the radio, and Tiffany kind of mocks him for still using a knife, and there are moments of pop culture.
Chucky's an old man.
Exactly, like he's an old man, like he's this kind of outdated relic of,
Chucky's a
sort of-
boomer in this film.
Exactly. And yeah, I just think all of those elements kind of inject this extra kind of life and just kind of extra dimensions, I suppose, into this character that otherwise may have sort of started to run out of steam by this point.
And one of the things that really reinvigorates the whole franchise is obviously Tiffany.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Tiffany.
Jennifer Tilly.
I mean,
Anna.
what?
What?
There's so much to break down here. Let's talk about the introduction of Tiffany
Oh my
as
God.
portrayed by Jennifer Tilly. My phone is full of pictures that I've taken off my TV screen as I was watching this film.
She is so sexy. It's unreal. She's like poured herself into this like skin tight black PVC number, and it's all fishnets and stilettos and tattoos and over dramatic makeup and blonde hair, but she just makes it work. She is absolutely smouldering. That voice. I love that the first introduction that we actually get to Tiffany is over the phone, because Jennifer Tilly has such a recognizable voice and way of speaking, and I almost got like tingles, when like she's talking to the cop on the phone and you just hear her voice and it's like, oh yeah, here she comes. I mean, she just explodes onto that screen, and just kind of, even when she is later in the doll's body, there is something about the way that again, I mean, the voice, but what just her performance that just absolutely captivates, I think.
She's got this sort of almost old school Hollywood bombshell approach.
Absolutely.
The look, the voice, the way she moves on screen, even
That
the
wiggle.
fact that the wiggle, the fact that she is frankly like, and we're not going to be talking about this actress's body, but I think there is something quite amazing about the fact that she's so voluptuous and so like bursting with over the top femininity, but really owns it and slinks with it. It's so invigorating to see. Like, I loved her on screen, and she's so fucking evil as well. Like, she's
I know.
Let's talk about that first. When she first appears, we see her murdering that cop.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of her as a like quite bloodthirsty killer?
Really bloodthirsty. She enjoys. She obviously enjoys killing people herself, and we know this through things that she says. She says something later to Chucky where she's like, "You know me, I'll kill anyone, but I'll only sleep with somebody I love." Like, she's almost got this kind of like romantic psychopath thing going on, which she's just like really owns. And that first kill, so she slits the cop's throat with her nail file, and then just like leans up against the cop car, filing her nails, and then kind of notices that she's got some of her blood and just like licks it off. It's absolutely delicious. I love it.
Iconic. I love it so much. And what do you think about the way that she her little trailer house and
God,
her kind of goth lover who comes in, and the way her whole plan of bringing back Chucky? What do you make kind of her plans?
I don't know how Jennifer Tilly does it, but she makes like trailer trash hot. It's amazing, Just, I mean, I know nothing. I'm a home counties girl from England. I know nothing about so-called trailer trash apart from what I've seen on film and TV. Okay, it's otherwise an alien concept to me apart from how I've seen it portrayed. But it's never portrayed in a particularly glamorous light. And then fucking Jennifer Tilly as Tiffany breezes in. And all of a sudden I'm like, I could live in a trailer. This looks great.
What do you make of her decor with all the dolls?
So many dolls, which play, you know, this amazing sort of mini plot point and link into this kind of Bride of Frankenstein's monster type theme, in that she is able to kind of pull together these bits and pieces and parts from other dolls that she then uses to kind of rebuild Chucky. I love that. I think that's such a really like smart and like cute little detail. And then with Damien, the quote unquote boyfriend, because obviously she's never they've never consummated the relationship.
Only slutty with homicide.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's having to basically fake killing people to try and win her over. And then, you know, this sort of psychopathic side of herself. It's not even just her killing, but she seems to kind of get off on, you know, this idea of other people killing or watching people murder, so that she kind of sets up this sick little menage a trois with Damien and the Chucky doll, because at the time, you know, she knows he's back, but he's essentially like, he's still inert as far as Damien is concerned. And then when Chucky then comes back to life and murders the boyfriend, you know, she's really like into it, and she's obviously so taken with him and obsessed with him that it's this sort of murderous strangler side of him that really does kind of play into this attraction. She's just, she's like bad to the bone, and I love it.
What do you make of her transformation scene?
So, I mean, Voodoo for Dummies needs to be mentioned, right?
I would like that book, please. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Gonna
please.
put it on my Amazon wish list if anybody wants to buy it for me.
Honestly, it makes me cackle. I love it so much. And her, you know, firstly you get her in the tub, and again this sort of idea of the romance behind her sort of wickedness. So she's watching Bride of Frankenstein, the movie, and like she's shedding a tear because,
so
you know,
sweet.
So sweet. And by this point she's already realized that she's perhaps made a mistake with bringing back Chucky, because he's treating her like crap. So you get that amazing scene with her in the bath, and then the links that the scene makes between her screaming and the screaming on screen, and the electricity that brings the Bride of Frankenstein back to life, and Chucky pushing the TV into the bath and all of the electricity there. And then she's bought him this like bride doll as like, because she mocks him, you know, she realizes that he's not the man that she's been sort of dreaming of for 10 years. And actually she has made this mistake. So she buys him this bride doll, as a kind of a way to laugh at him and to give him that engagement ring back, although he hadn't really given it to her as an engagement ring in the first place, which is part of the problem.
I mean, their whole relationship, I almost don't even want to go into it because I don't fully understand it.
Same.
Sure. Let's just accept it, and here we are. There's a reconstructed serial killer doll. There's Voodoo for Dummies, and now Tiffany is electrocuted in her bathtub.
Exactly. And then she gets voodooed into the bride doll, but she doesn't look good enough, Anna. She's not. If Tiffany of all women is going to be transported, soul and all, into the body of a doll, that doll had better look fit and punky and rock and roll and sexy, and she'd better have bleach blonde hair and overplucked eyebrows and a boob tattoo and a leather jacket and big boots and like proper sort of vampy lipstick and a beauty spot, and that, like, you know, the makeover scene, and it's that gorgeous like stop motion animation as well that just looks so good.
Barbie, eat your heart out.
I know.
It's one of the best quotes of the movie. I love it. I mean, like, if they sold those dolls when I was growing up, and actually I'm pretty sure they did, I just wasn't aware of it, that would have been my favorite doll.
100%. I would. Oh my god. I mean, she's a style icon.
Yes. So what do you think then? I mean, you've sort of alluded to your opinion on it, but what do you think of the designs of Tiffany and Chucky?
I think they are great, because Chucky, you know, we've been used to him looking a certain way, and even after he gets like crispified at the end of the first one, then the whole sort of opening sequence of the second film is him being reconstructed, and, you know, they sort of put the new face over him and give him new eyes and make him look all shiny and new again. And there's a bit of sort of callback to that in this film, like where she's doing up his shoelaces and stuff like that all sort of calls back to him being reconstructed. So, you know, those first few films, he looks similar at the beginning of each, sort of through each, and then at the end of the third film, like, his face is all smashed to bits. And so here she's had to do this kind of Frankenstein's monster reconstruction on him, so it's all sort of stitches and staples, and one of his eyes has been kind of popped out. She's had to replace it, but that means that he hasn't got the lids on that eye, and so he can only like he's only like, one of them only looks normal and the other one looks like it's about to pop out the whole time. It's all like red raw.
He looks demented.
Just absolutely demented. And I think like there is a line in this film, I think it is Damien actually, where he says like, oh, like, he's so 80s, like, he's not even scary anymore. Yeah. And then you look at him in this kind of new state where his face is all like scarred and kind of, you know, like they've again like thought about it, like, okay, well, how are we gonna make our villain scary again? And I think like aesthetically that works really well to do that. And then Tiffany is just how they managed to make like the goddess that is Jennifer Tilly work as this like cute little doll is just amazing. And it really is that kind of makeover scene, and you watching her transfer each of those like elements of her human form over to the doll with the hair dye and the nail polish and the beauty spot and the boots and everything. Yeah, I mean, I'd have had a doll like that, and I'd dress like her today if I could, you know, if my hair could stand the bleach now.
And to echo Damien, really, did you find the film scary?
No.
Yeah.
No, I didn't find it scary. Because there are elements of the first couple, certainly the first one, the bit where Mum has just noticed that Chucky doesn't have his batteries in, and she goes over and threatens to throw him into the fire, and he suddenly comes to life and starts screaming in her face, and like the kind of fury in his little doll face and the way that he's so like violently attacking her. Like that is, I still think, you know, I've seen that film a bunch of times, and I still think that's quite a shocking, like, and I don't think that Bride of Chucky has so many of those shocking moments, and a lot of the violence and the kills are slightly more played for a laugh. They're almost like the sorts of kills that then there's like a funny quip after. I don't think they're so much designed to be scary, but that doesn't kind of make them any less impressive. I think that, you know, the horror and the violence in this film is strong, but scare wise, not so much.
I mean, I'm going to drag this way into the gutter now. Let's talk about the doll sex scene.
Oh, please.
I mean, thoughts, opinions, takes, puns.
Notes, sketches.
My whole section of the notes on this part was just in full capitals. Doll butt, doll tongue. So that's the level we're working with here, Becky.
Amazing. Okay, let me just scroll down to my. Oh, I've just got Dolly sex scene. Lol.
Did we need a doll sex scene? Question.
I mean, is need really what we're talking about here, Anna? You know, do you need that new dress? Do you need that new nail polish? No. Do you want those things? Do you deserve them? Yes, you do. Did we need a Dolly sex scene? No. Did we deserve it? Yes.
Please elaborate on why do we deserve to know that the murder doll Chucky and his murder bride Tiffany are anatomically correct.
Anatomically correct. Oh my God. Okay, so firstly, just from a very practical plot point of view, we need them to have sex so that Tiffany can get pregnant and have the baby, and then we get Seed of Chucky. So we need that.
I mean, the follow-up question to that is, do we actually need
Seed
Seed of Chucky? And
Now that is another discussion.
And what did we do to deserve Seed of Chucky? But please continue.
I mean, I have nothing against the doll sex scene. I think it was quite ahead of its time. I remember when Team America World Police came out and everybody was losing their fucking minds over the puppet sex in that. We had Bride of Chucky doing it years before.
And then Melissa came along and it made it legit and appropriate and it won some awards.
I mean, tasteful even.
But, you know, it all started with the Bride of Chucky.
It did. Like I say, you know, I mean, these were the innovators in the craft of dolly sex.
Yeah. I mean, the doll tongue really perturbed me.
Yeah, no, I don't. Nobody, no, you don't need that.
No.
I prefer the silhouette bit.
Yeah.
Silhouette. Do you have a rubber? Look at me, I'm made of rubber.
I mean
that's
iconic
strong.
lines, to be honest.
But of course, the irony of that is they did need a rubber because
Well, quite.
the inevitable happened and she fell pregnant.
So that brings me neatly on to what did you think of the ending? Okay, I see.
I actually really, really like the ending because you get the sort of classic denouement. It's a stormy night and Tiffany has realized that she just wants a real good guy, not a good guy doll. You know, this guy isn't good enough for her. And let's face it, he's not. She's a queen. She deserves a king.
A serial killer king. To be
A serial
specific.
killer king. Yeah, obviously. You know, a king within her own context and wheelhouse. And Chucky, he's like, he gets defeated. He's not particularly worried about it because he'll always be back. He always comes back.
Yeah, because he knows the voodoo.
Exactly. And then, you know, it's like, okay, so Catherine Heigl, who we haven't even mentioned yet, her and her hunky boyfriend are free to go and, I don't know, live to be happily married as she's 17. Some odd choices made in terms of marriages in this movie.
I mean, that whole plot line, I both don't want it, don't need it, adds very little. Catherine Heigl, whatever.
Agreed. And you also get the really like dodgy, like David the gay best friend, you know, where he is just, I mean, he's the kind of, he's the like queer equivalent of like the sacrificial Negro, right? It's just like all he does is facilitate the relationship of this straight cis white couple, and then at the end gets exploded by a truck so they can get away. Like, it's bullshit. Anyway, back to the ending and Tiffany's pregnancy. They sort of get away, and then you get the cop, and he's going over and he's like prodding at her, trying to figure out if it's safe because he knows that there's something bad going on. And then she sort of screams back into life. You get this bizarre birth scene with this tiny little baby with like gnashy pointy needle teeth, who then jumps up and basically rips the cop's throat out. Roll credits. Like, I mean, again, need it? No. Love it? Yeah.
It's the Carrie's arm that we all love at the end of a film. Just when you thought
100%.
everything is sort of done and sorted, there's just one last jump scare that comes out of nowhere and gives us no resolution. I do love it as well.
Good.
So let's move on from one murder doll into another and talk about Annabelle from 2014.
John, wake up.
What's it?
Next door, I heard a scream.
Stay here. Go check it out.
John? Is everything all right?
Oh my God, you're covered in blood.
Go back inside. It's not mine. It's not. Go back inside and call an ambulance right now. Go!
I like your dolls.
You survived. You don't come out the other side of something like this weaker. What is there left to be scared of?
This is the last of them. How did that get in there? I swear I threw it out.
Things must have got mixed up. There, she fits right in. There are things happening that I can't explain.
We should talk to someone.
I don't think what you're experiencing is a ghost.
Sometimes demons can attach themselves to objects.
What do I do?
Protect your family.
Who are you?
This is a spin-off of the Conjuring universe. And it's in the first Conjuring film where we first meet Annabelle, the possessed doll. Did you find her scary then? Did you want to see a whole movie about her?
Yeah. So, cards on the table. I'm a big fan of the Waniverse, the Conjuring universe, whatever you want to call it.
I'd never heard the Waniverse, but I am 100% in support of this. That's the only way I'm going to refer to it from now on.
I 100% didn't coin that, by the way. I'm not sure exactly where I got it from, but the Waniverse.
I'm saying that you did.
Okay, cool.
You coined it. Coined by Becky Dark.
Please don't. I'll get in trouble. I know I will. So yeah, I love these films. I love the James Wan Conjuring universe. You know, there are some that I don't. I'm not a huge fan of The Conjuring 2. I hated The Nun. But I love the Warrens. I think that, especially considering the real life Warrens, certainly had some kind of questionable parts of their practice. I think that the film incarnations of the Warrens I really get on with, and actually am a little bit in love with both of them as well.
Totes.
So I'm always happy when they're on screen. Sadly, you don't actually get any of them in Annabelle. You sort of get like a knee, a knee and a mention. I think that's all you get. But Conjuring, big fan. And in fact, all of the Annabelle fans, I actually kind of like. Dolls, for me, like there's like dolls and dummies and puppets, right? Like marionettes. And I think I find them as creepy as the next person, because there is something generally creepy about those kind of these creations that look so much like us but move differently or don't move at all, and that makes them even more creepy. And then, you know, it's just always terrifying when, like, you think, oh god, was their head actually turned to the left a moment ago? I thought it was turned to a right. Oh my god, it moved. Oh my god, it's looking at me.
I mean, these sort of especially these sort of puppet-sized dolls. Maybe doll is not the right word. You know, maybe some doll maker or doll expert might correct me. Please do. But they've been such a staple of horror cinema, like from an episode of the Goosebumps series, which I loved, which featured a demonic puppet doll, or Dead Silence, also by James Wan, I believe. What do you think about puppets and dolls make them so creepy and such a constant thing that horror filmmakers go back to?
I think it is this sort of uncanny aspect of them looking human, but the proportions are a bit off. Their eyes, like, you know, doll makers, I think, put a lot of work into making those glass eyes like look so realistic. So you get these sort of very real looking eyes in then a very sort of static face, which I think can be really creepy.
Yes. It's the static face.
Yeah, I think it is. And, you know, as I said, like the fact that they don't move almost gives them this potential at all times to then scare. Like, it's like, you know, they're not supposed to move, and so you're therefore just constantly waiting for them to move, you know? And they, in horror films, they inevitably do. So
going back to the movie itself, to Annabelle, maybe not as charismatic as the Warrens, but what do you make of our lead characters, the Forms?
I really, really like Mia and John, actually, as a... Like, John's a bit... He's a bit naff, isn't he? Like, he doesn't have a huge amount to offer, really. He's the archetypal, sort of ambitious, overworked, like, slightly absent husband, especially, and then sort of slightly absent father once the baby arrives. So, you know, he doesn't have a huge amount to do, but I do think that the writing of their relationship is pretty good and better than a lot of relationships that you see on screen, where they would just be bickering the whole time and like slamming doors and stuff. There's one moment quite near the beginning when she's still pregnant and she's sort of talking to him about his work, and he says how stressed he is about it, and he says something about, you know, this isn't exactly the ideal situation, is it, with her being pregnant, and etc., etc. And they sort of get into this argument, but actually the way that is written and the way that the sort of actors' chemistry and the way that it's played, I think is pretty kind of authentic and convincing. And it's those little moments that, for me, sort of ground that relationship and make it a bit more convincing than, you know, that just sort of something that's quite shallowly written. I think it shows that there has been thought put into it. It's pretty stereotypical. It's pretty like archetypical, but it's like one level deeper than that, and I kind of respect it.
And What about the explanation of why Annabelle the doll actually becomes evil? Because we're pretty much explained that in the very early on in the film.
Yeah, so the film is set basically in the shadow of the Manson family murders. So you get Mia right at the beginning, you know, sort of saying to her husband, "Oh, make sure you lock the door." And he's like, "Nobody locks their doors." And she's like, "Things have changed." You know, this
Yes.
idea of
Yes.
the 1960s and 69, the summer of love, and this sort of this innocence that everybody was feeling at the time, and how the rug was suddenly pulled out from people with these brutal murders. And the realization, I think, by people in like California and the rest of the states and a little bit around the world, that actually, you know, things aren't as sweet and safe as we thought they. So you've kind of got this as the context of the film, and also just on a kind of production design side of things, I think that for me, I really believe the production design in this film. I think that the costumes and the hair and the makeup and the decor and the way it's shot, I believe that it's that late 60s, early 70s. And I've seen other films quite recently that have been set in a similar time. And like there's some really kind of, I don't know, like anachronistic points about the production design that are just so distracting that it kind of just brings you out of it all the time. But I think, again, there's been thought put into the design of this film, and that helps me sort of lose myself in the story, because I'm not constantly looking at stuff like thinking, you know, well, that doesn't look quite right or whatever. So sort of along with that era is you get this sort of storyline around the cult, and Annabelle, the daughter of their next door neighbors, has run off previously to go and join this cult, and they basically return, kill the parents, and it sort of turns into a bit of a murder-suicide because she slits her own throat whilst holding the doll, and her blood kind of runs like into the doll, and that is how the doll becomes possessed. And the kind of Annabelle doll that we know then sort of going forward. So,
and to stick on production design, what sort of films do you think Annabelle takes inspiration from? Because one of the things that I kept thinking of as I was rewatching it was Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, that would definitely be the one that immediately springs to mind for me. But weirdly, maybe not kind of inspiration-wise in terms of the production design and stuff, but this is a film that's like, it's really referential. So it's obvious, you know, James Wan and the rest of the team kind of behind this, you know, they obviously have this kind of grounding in horror. Like I you know, James Wan he's a horror fan who is making horror films. And there are absolutely, you know, callbacks. So Rosemary's Baby was one that absolutely jumps out, but like Scream with the popcorn, I thought was a definite reference.
For sure.
Even with the like runaway baby carriage made me think of like Ghostbusters 2.
And the Witches.
The Witches, absolutely, down like the cliff. And then even like outside of the horror genre, I couldn't help thinking of Speed and the like baby carriage full of cans, except this one is books. And I love that. Like, I love that it, for me, you know, I enjoy a kind of a little like nod and a wink to stuff like that when it's done well. And I think, again, because the production design is strong and that world that they have built feels authentic, you can kind of slot those little things in and they don't feel overdone. And if you haven't seen the films that they're referencing, it doesn't feel like, oh, that was weird, or like, it, you know, it's just, it's quite sort of cute. And yeah, I love those little moments in this.
And what do you think of the design of Annabelle the doll herself? Do you find her creepy?
Yes. Are there people who don't find her creepy. Like, do you not find her creepy?
I find it creepy that she's like the size of a I guess 7-year-old child. I mean, she is massive for a doll.
She's so big. That is so true.
Like if she actually moved and held a knife like Chucky, I'd be fucking terrified, because I was like, oh, if you're animated now, you can actually take an adult human being.
Yeah, like there's that bit where she sort of like stands up, aka is like held up by the demon later, and with like how long her dress is, she's like stood up, and I'm like, she is as tall as me. Like, that is insane. But the thing is she, so when she first gets given to Mia as the gift, she's like all kind of new and shiny, right? And she's like, her hair's all nice, and she's got like the little blush on her cheeks, and she's all clean. And I'm still looking at her like, I mean, that is a murder doll. Like, there's no way, that object is not already cursed. And then as the film and the franchise continues, obviously she gets like covered in blood and thrown in a bin and I don't know, held by demons. Like, she gets sort of general grub and kind of like muck on her. And she becomes more and more terrifying as she becomes more and more sort of blackened and chipped or whatever. But yeah, there is at no point in Annabelle's life cycle that I'm not like, yeah, you are not coming in my house.
Yeah, like you wouldn't purchase Annabelle the doll yourself and display her in your house.
No.
Wouldn't give her as a present to a friend or a child.
I don't think I'd give her as a present to an enemy, Anna. Who am I kidding? Of course I would.
But what about we kind of have to talk about one of the things that I did find really problematic about the film. And it's Evelyn.
Yes,
Alfred Woodward's character, who is basically fulfilling the role of the quote-unquote magical Negro character.
Yeah.
And also sacrifices herself at the end for the sake of this. I'll be honest, I didn't take to the forums. I'll be like, they're very boring, they're very vanilla. I do not care for either of them. I do think they're quite well written, but I'm like, why would Alfred Woodward have to die? When with the really shoddy character that she's given, she's already 1,000 times more interesting, and her backstory is more interesting than both of them combined.
Yeah, like, why aren't we watching her movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. No, you're completely right. And I mean, I think I had seen Annabelle once, and then I saw Horror Noir, and then I've seen Annabelle a couple of times since I saw that documentary. And I mean, that documentary should be called out at all times and should be watched maybe like once a month or something, just to remind ourselves. I learnt so much about just stuff that I just hadn't like wasn't not aware of, but just didn't even realize that I kind of needed to be aware of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just such a bombshell and such an eye-opener for me. And then you go back to watching a film like Annabelle after hearing the people on that documentary talk so eloquently and intelligently about why these things are problems, and it's like, you know, you've hit the nail on the head already. She is the magical Negro and she's the sacrificial Negro in like one character. It is ludicrous that she would kind of make these choices, I guess, especially considering the loss that she has already had in her life, that we have learnt about with her losing her daughter Ruby in such a tragic way that she you know, she sort of blames herself for, and you know, and for her to own this fucking like magic bookshop and just happens to know about sort of hauntings and things, and then, as you say, you know, gets to that stage with Mia and Leah and John, where she's just ready to jump out of a window, and they somehow write this off with like a throwaway line to, oh well, like Ruby told me that it wasn't my time to go and I had another purpose. This must be my purpose. It's just like, guys, really?
I know. It's such a... I'm not gonna lie, I got really mad rewatching this film. Because I get really mad anytime that really amazing actors turn up in these types of films and are just wasted. Because Alfred Woodward is like so amazing, and
she's
I wanted
incredible.
to see more of her. And like I said before, I just find her character to be so much more interesting than Mia.
Yeah, I'm with you. You know, you're absolutely right. She's such a versatile actress as well. You know, you look at the range of roles that she is able to just absolutely own, like anything from kind of Star Trek First Contact through to Clemency, and you're just like, you know, you are using this caliber of actress for this sort of role. You know, it shouldn't be it shouldn't be done, the writing shouldn't be done like this for any sort of black actress or actress of colour, but it almost makes it more insulting when it is an actress of Alfred Woodard's caliber. Amazing.
It's exactly like the misuse of Forrest Whitaker in Species, which previous podcast guest Layla Latif also really pointed out really eloquently. But I digress, and to continue our conversation with that, what do you think about the Annabelle franchise? Have you seen those films? Are you a fan? Do you think there's more story that Annabelle needs?
No to the final bit. Weirdly, no. I guess weirdly because I know that a lot of people aren't necessarily fans of the Annabelle franchise, and see it as a bit pointless, and see it as this sort of quiet bang type horror. And it is that, like, it's just jump scares a lot of the time, you know, tension. So much of it is done with the sound design and the score, and then all of a sudden, bang, the tension is lifted and you get that little jolt, and then kind of the rest of the film around it is a bit meh. You know, that's what these are, and people use that as a criticism, which I can see, but I actually don't have a problem with it. I enjoy these sorts of like Ghost Train films, right, where it's just like la 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 It's like, it's fine by me. They're not winning any Oscars, although no horror really wins Oscars. I don't think that Annabelle has any further to go, but in terms of Annabelle creation and Annabelle Comes Home, do you know what? Yeah, I fucking liked him. So there.
I mean, this film is quite recent. It's 2014, and the subsequent Annabelle films are even, you know, just from a few years ago. Would you recommend that people seek this out, especially maybe if they're not familiar with the Conjuring franchise?
Yeah, I don't think you need to have necessarily seen The Conjuring or The Conjuring 2. I think that the introduction to this film gives enough. I like that sort of present day, she's demonic. We hear a little bit about her moving around the house or around the apartment of the nurses, and then the Warrens are obviously sort of conducting that interview, and then you get the flashback to her origin story, and then it kind of bookends it quite nicely with the mum buying it then for the nurse daughter. I think that works quite nicely, and I think you don't necessarily need to have seen the rest of the franchise where she's sitting in a cabinet in, you know, their locked room and stuff. I recommend it, but with a little sort of caveat, I suppose, that if you're not into jump scare horror. You know, if you like something that is maybe a little more cerebral or a little more kind of extreme, for example, then, you know, these probably aren't for you, and you'll probably find them a bit, I don't know, frustrating, I guess, like, or tame maybe, or just a bit boring. But if you like to just sort of, you know, sit there with a cup of tea on a Sunday afternoon and be made to jump for an hour and a half, I think that these films do that particularly well. So
They're like the equivalent of smooth jazz for horror fans.
oh my God.
Easy listening with occasional jump scares.
I've never been so insulted in my life.
You know me, I'm bound to make really terrible comparisons when we chat. Purely to entertain you, Becky.
No, the most upsetting thing about it, Anna, is you're not wrong.
Listen, we've all got our equivalent of smooth, easy listening jazz. We need to find our joy in whatever we can these days. To wrap our conversation about both of these films and to bring them together, really, what do you think of the possessed / evil / murdered doll as a monster?
For me, it works well because it brings together these two staples of horror. Like, it brings it together so well into like one terrifying little package. Dolls, as we've spoken about, are creepy. Like, people find dolls creepy, and, you know, possession is something that, I mean, I'm a massive fan of like occult as a
Yes, same.
as a like subgenre, you know, possession and kind of religious horror and stuff like that. And so to bring stuff like possessions are scary, dolls are creepy. So if you get like a possessed doll, I'm into it. And I think that, you know, there are a lot of films that do it well. And Annabelle and Bride of Chucky are so different. Like, you know, we talked about the kind of humor behind Bride of Chucky and the fact that it's very knowing, very tongue-in-cheek. If there's anything about Annabelle that, you know, would really kind of turn me off, it almost is that sort of earnestness behind it. And of course the seriously like problematic racial stuff. These two possessed dolls are like as different could be, and I find Annabelle scary in a kind of jump scare way. I don't find Bride of Chucky scary, but it has other stuff that it brings to the horror genre that kind of supersedes that. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Bride of Chucky is the superior film. But
Correct.
Again, that's probably like, you know, there could definitely be arguments made in the opposite direction, that Annabelle's maybe a better made film, you know. I don't know, but they're so different. But I think what they do share is this kind of the success, I guess, in putting these two things of like kind of occult and dolls together to make these sort of really effective genre films that, I mean, you know, Bride of Chucky was made ages ago and I think still stands up. Annabelle's much more recent, and I think, you know, it has a sort of cult following in a different way. It's funny.
Becky, thank you so much for your time and your insight. And where can people find out more about what you're up to today?
So on Twitter, I am @BunnyDark. You can follow my two podcasts, which I co-host. Don't Point That Horror at Me is on @PointHorrorPod with my best friend Jill. And Return to Erie, Indiana is Erie Indiana Pod that I co-host with my friend Josh. And there's a Linktree link in my profile on Twitter and Instagram that you can follow and find all my writing bits and pieces.
Thank you again so much. Always
Thanks, Anna.
a lot of fun.
Oh my God, just the best. Thank you.
And that's it for this episode of the Final Ghost podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. If you can, please do leave us a review or even just a rating on Apple Podcasts. This really helps with the podcast being discovered. You can find out more about what we do on thefinalghost.co.uk and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Final Ghost UK. You can also follow Becky on Twitter at BunnyDark, and I am at Anna B. Demented. Thank you for listening, and next week we're going back to zombies with The Girl with All the Gifts.